All right, joining us now, she will be inducted into the UCF Athletics Hall of Fame on Friday night, November 10th. She is first team All American, the first All American in UCF softball history, the most decorated UCF softball player in the history of the program. And I've said it over again, you cannot have any conversation when it comes to GOATs, greatest, or most accomplished UCF softball topics without this young lady being brought up, rightfully so. Arguably the best of all time. Shelby Turnier joining us now here. How does that feel? You're almost here. You're almost gonna be a Hall of Famer. How does it feel right now as you're close to that date?
Yeah, it's definitely starting to set in. Earlier this, fall when I was contacted about being inducted into the Hall of Fame and everything, it still felt like it was just so far off and so far away. And so I've kind of just been, letting my wife Sammy actually do all of the preparation for that. And she has literally set up everything. And that's kind of like her forte. Um, so now that it's actually winding down and there's like less than 2 weeks, I have to really start to think about a speech and all of the important things that come with being inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Now you will join Stephanie Best, Allison Kime, Natalie Lane, and your teammate Mackenzie Otis, the fifth UCF softball player to get inducted into the UCF Athletics Hall of Fame. I think the number is going to end up being around 90, 92 people that have ever been inducted to the Hall of Fame. But specifically, when I mentioned those names that I just brought up, you're going to be joining. What comes to your mind?
Legends. I mean, people that when I was coming through the UCF softball program, those were people that were constantly in the conversation about players that we were trying to be like, emulate, people that represented UCF softball well. Um, and so to be among those people now is really, really an honor because their careers were so prestigious and they have really created a legacy that, even when I was going through college, that we were still talking about them. So it's really, really cool to be among those women.
Let's take you through that time when you find out, because your situation was unique because obviously Mackenzie got inducted last year. So for you, it's kind of unique than the other because they were all generally stunned when they got the call. They didn't see it coming. Now, in your situation, it's unique because Mackenzie was your teammate. So you were excited. I don't think anybody was surprised that she got in, but now in your head, you're thinking, well, if she got in, I got a shot to get in here, but yet you don't know. And what's interesting is she got inducted in September last year. Well, the Hall of Fame this year is in November. So take me through your mindset, really going back to Matt getting inducted and kind of what went through your mind. Because there's probably a part of you that's thinking, I think I got a shot to get in, but you don't know.
Yeah. So I think the really cool thing about both Mackenzie and myself is that we were, inducted on the first year that we were eligible to get inducted. And I know that that is super duper rare. So, like, when I found out last year that Mackenzie was getting inducted and it was her, first year that she was able to be eligible for it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Like, some people are out for years before their name ends up being called. And so I remember us kind of having a conversation last year, and you were like, don't be surprised if you're getting this call next year. So, in my head, I'm thinking, wow, we were an amazing 1-2 punch. And I say 1-2, but it was really a 1-1. And so when this year rolled around, and I think it was August or September, and I hadn't heard anything from anybody, and I remember saying to Sammy, I was like, you know what, it might not be my time, and that's okay. If it takes a little bit longer, if it never happens, I know I made my mark at UCF. So I honestly can't even remember the date that I was called, but I just remember it being kind of like late. Thinking if I was going to get inducted, I probably would have heard something by now since they did it in September last year. So then I was contacted and I was like, okay, this is awesome. So yeah, that was kind of my thought process. But again, I'm really honored to be in the Hall of Fame and being inducted into the Hall of Fame, and especially on the first year that I'm eligible is just like a cherry on top.
So there was a moment where you're like, okay, I guess it's not going to happen. Then
Yes.
you admit that that happened. So when you did get the phone call, what went through your mind?
Well, I'm terrible with my phone. Anybody who knows me
Yeah,
knows that I will go literally days without checking my phone. I am like the anti-millennial. I rarely answer phone calls. I take weeks to get back to people when they text me. I'm just really, really bad with my phone. So when I saw that a call was coming through from Orlando, I was like, that's weird. Maybe I should answer this call. And so I did. And so it was Carlos McCants on the other line, and he's the one that's putting all this together for those of you who don't know who he is. Um, and he said something to me along the lines of like, we need you to be near your phone, tomorrow between these hours. You've made it into the top, you know, 10 people that are up for
finalist. Yeah,
this,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that are finalists for this, Hall of Fame induction and this and that. And so that was where I was like, oh my gosh, I think it's happening. Like, I'm such a like, I overthink things. I'm a little bit of a skeptic. And so I hang up on the phone with him and I'm like, guys, I'm saying this to Sammy and my dad. I'm like, guys, oh my gosh, I was just told that I'm in the top 10, but I think there is no top 10. Like I think I've made it. I think they just want me to be near my phone tomorrow because I'm so bad at answering it. Um, and so that was kind of when I was like, okay, guys, I think I'm in. Like I was really excited, all the things, and I was like, I'm still gonna hold my breath until I hear tomorrow. And
Yeah, you
so,
don't want
and
to jinx it. You don't want to jinx it.
right, right. And then sure enough, the athletic director called me and formally, congratulated me and told me that I would be inducted. And I was like, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah, they showed the footage of that, like your reaction. I could tell you were kind of taken aback for a second, right? Is one of those where it takes you a minute to kind of
Yeah.
register, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not really a like screamer when I'm excited. I'm just kind of like, oh my gosh. Like I just kind of take it in and like, wow, this is like really, really freaking cool. And so that was kind of my reaction.
Well, better than Mac. Mac, when they called her, she was in the beach, in the middle of the beach. Thankfully, Preston picked up the phone, or we might have some problem there. Um,
Yeah,
but
that's
you're part
funny.
of this historic class because this is the first UCF Hall of Fame class during as members of the Big 12, which is obviously a big story for the university. John Hitt, who was obviously passed away, was the university's president while you were a student. You've been inducted. Gene McDowell, who was a football head coach and an AD way back in the 80s, helped kind of built the football program to what it is now. Mark Daniels, who's the voice of UCF athletics, calls men's football, men's basketball, baseball. That's significant. Delana Sarton, who's a star volleyball player who you both played around the same time. Sarton's senior year was
Yeah,
14.
I was gonna say I think our time overlapped. I,
Yep.
I remember going to a few volleyball games and
She was pretty good, All American herself. The cheerleading national championship team with Linda Gooch, obviously coaching them, I think is also joining in there. And then Kyle Bono, UCF pitcher from the 2000s, will be inducted. This is a large class and a historic class. What does it mean to be part of a class that this class will always be remembered as the first Hall of Fame class in the first year of the Big 12?
yeah, that's honestly so special. I wasn't really thinking about it in terms of the Big 12 and stuff like that, but now that you've said that, like it's really, really cool. I think it's kind of cool that when I was a player there, also we won the first American Athletic championship that was up as well. So it's kind of cool that we've done, some pretty historic things in the time that I was at UCF. But I mean, to be among all of the recipients that you just mentioned is truly incredible. I mean, they all had historic impacts at UCF. And so, yeah, I mean, I really can't put it more into words than to just say it's incredible, and I'm very, very grateful for the recognition.
You're going to be celebrated all weekend. You're going to be honored at the football game against Oklahoma State as well as the class. And then as I understand, you're throwing out the first pitch. Softball's hosting Florida on fall ball on Sunday, which is expected to be packed. That's going to be unique. And then you'll probably be celebrated again in the spring during the first year of the program, going to the Big 12, which is going to be a marquee schedules there. But what does that mean to you? You're basically getting celebrated all weekend. I know your former head coach is coming, from what I understand. Coach Gillespie's coming. A lot of your former teammates are coming. What does that mean that a lot of people are making the effort to go see you being inducted?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really special. And I will say I'm somebody that, and my wife will attest to this, I don't like when things are about me. As much as I loved being in the circle and being the winning pitcher and getting all the strikeouts and the wins and like this and that, like I was surrounded by other people. So it really truly wasn't just about me. But I deflect a lot of recognition outside of like playing the sport. Um, and so I'm gonna really, really try and just like soak it all in. And I do this thing where I downplay so many accolades of mine. And I just try, I don't like when things are about me. I try and make them about my nieces or like other people. And I'm gonna try and do everything that I can to really soak up every moment of this weekend, all of the recognition, all of the special things that are happening, all of the people that are around me to, support me and support UCF softball and UCF athletics as a whole. And I'm going to really just try and do everything that I can to be in the moment and to stop deflecting and just enjoy being in the spotlight for what feels like maybe the last time maybe not the last time, but the last really big time that I'm being recognized by UCF.
Well, you're always going to be recognized every time you come into the Plex. Come on now.
Totally,
That's
totally. But I mean on this like, national of a scale.
Well, it's the last It's the last. I've always compared this when I've told the others that got in. Like, you're joining your last illustrious team, basically. This is a different
Right.
your last team you're joining in a
Right.
lot of ways. The highest honor you can
Exactly.
imagine.
Exactly.
Tell the audience what you've been up to now.
Oh goodness. So much. So after UCF, I played in the Pro Softball League, the NPF, for 3 seasons with the Chicago Bandits. We won a championship. Woo! Go Elo.
Yeah, I got the
Represent.
jersey. Got your
Um,
jersey. Yeah.
oh yeah. Um, and we won a championship in 2016, right after I graduated from UCF. I got to play a huge role in that championship run. Pitched a bunch of innings in relief, and I actually got to give Monica Abbott one of her 2 losses
That's correct. Game
during
3
that
decider.
postseason.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really, really awesome. Probably one of the highlights of my pro career. Um, and after that, I decided to stay up here and start a business, doing private softball training, lessons, camps, clinics, that type of thing. That is what I'm doing now. I've been doing it for 5 years now. Our business, I say our because I own this business with my wife, Sammy, who is also a better softball player than I ever was.
She disagrees now. She totally disagrees, which is amusing. She was a good standout herself, but she disagrees. She says you're the Hall of Fame of the family now.
She's right. And I will say this, I like to give her crap at lessons in front of our clients, but I
Oh
am
man,
also the only Hall of Famer in our, or not Hall of Famer, but All-American in our family.
that's true too.
Um,
Yes.
but yeah, her name is all over the record books, both at
Yeah,
her
come on,
college.
Western Illinois. Have your Hall of Fame ready. Let's go. Let's get
I
her
know
in.
she has to be out 10 years. So
10.
10
Yeah, you
years.
got in 7, so you still have bragging rights no matter what
Right,
happens.
right. I'm gonna hold it over her for the 3 years for
Sure.
sure.
Yeah.
Um, oh, 2 more years? Oh, right, because she's a year older than me. So I only have 2 more years to
You still got in before she
get
did.
to her.
Quicker,
Yeah.
got in quicker.
Um, but so anyway, we own this business together. We've been doing this for 5 years. Our business is absolutely booming. I could not be more grateful for um, the work that we've put in, the clients that we have, the loyalty to us. I mean, it is just incredible. We have hired 2 additional pitching coaches since starting this business. We now have our own facility, which is really awesome. And yeah, that's about it. I
Where
got
can they
married.
where can people find that information? Because this has become big now in softball, pitching lessons, hitting lessons. It's not, I mean, I've talked to every player. It's not like it used to be where you kind of had to really search and find. It's all over the place. And I know in the Midwest where you're at right now, that's become huge,
Yeah.
there in particular.
Yeah. So, yeah, the training up here is insane. And partially it's because the weather is crappy for 6 months out of the year. And so, pretty much between like November and March, April, um, it's really hard for kids to be outside. So, they take lessons with us. I mean, our lessons are year round. Our clients come in year round. They don't come in just for the winter. But on top of that, they rent tunnels from us to do extra work and things like that. And all that information can be found on our website, which is deltaperformancesoftball.com. It has all of our bios on there, all of our, schedule and available time slots and things like that. So yeah.
Pretty good. Pretty good. And I've seen it. Your dad is giving high praise to it. She says with all the photos there. How many photos of you as a player is in there over there where you guys train?
So there's actually 0 photos right now.
Wow.
I
You're
know,
kidding.
I know. So we are actually in the process of getting Sammy's some of her pro jerseys hung. And then once we do that, we are going to be putting up our framed jerseys from both college and pro and things like that. We were going to bring some of our trophies in, like the All-American stuff. Sammy has a bunch of statistical leader trophies from college. But those are so important and irreplaceable to us that we just didn't even want to risk like
I
bringing
don't
it
blame it. Yeah, I don't blame
here and then somebody accidentally hitting it or whatever. So it's pretty like child proof in our facility.
fair. All right, very fair. Let's talk about the beginning of this. You played at high school at Palm Beach Gardens. What got you to go to UCF? Because you were a very highly touted player. Like I remember, how many times you win a state championship at Palm Beach Gardens?
I won 2 state championships and they were in back-to-back years. So
So
when
I
I was a
remember,
sophomore and a junior.
because you were the first player that Coach Gillespie, who at the time was the UCF head coach, would talk about, hey, this girl's coming, and you were still in high school. And I'm like, why are you telling me this? She said, everybody. And then there were people that didn't even follow softball, but lived down there in that region that would tell me about you. so tell me about that path of how you ended up going to UCF, because it wasn't like you were necessarily inbred in softball, because you did a lot of other things other than softball.
Well, I will say softball was like definitely the sport that I played. I was into, other things and I had other hobbies and things like that. But yeah, I mean, the road to UCF was kind of an interesting one. I'm not going to sit here and say that I had like the best weekend of my life when they watched me pitch. I was actually recognized. Yeah, I was actually recognized by Coach Ruben Felix when I was at a tournament when I was a sophomore in Texas. It was called the Ronald McDonald Tournament. And, we were from Florida. So we flew out there. We had, a few games on Friday. And then I want to say we had like 6 or 7 games on Saturday. It was something just absolutely ridiculous. And I remember he, came by our field and we were on like game 6 of the day, and I was pitching, and I had probably already pitched 3 games at this point, and I was just like dogging it out there, just trying to do anything that I could to get the ball remotely close to the batter. I was dead tired. We had been there since like 6 a.m. It was probably 10 p.m. at this point. It was just, there wasn't really anything left in the tank except for maybe like some heart at that point. Um, and so, yeah. And so, after that game, he went to my coach and he was like, hey, I know that this is, you guys are on your 6th game of the day. I love like her heart and her passion out there, and the fact that she's still pushing. And so that was what kind of got the ball rolling a little bit. And I think at one point I went to a camp at UCF. And then again, I was pitching in front of Coach Gillespie, Coach Jerice Olson, and Ruben Felix. Um, and yeah, that's kind of what started that. And I think what's actually kind of funny is that, and many people don't know this, and I'm not even sure if Coach G would remember this, but I also played outfield. I was a pitcher and outfielder. And so during one of my visits to UCF, when we were kind of talking about scholarship and this and that, Coach G asked me, she was like, do you want to pitch or do you want to play outfield here? And I was like, I was under the impression that I was just here to pitch. Like, I play outfield and I love playing outfield, but like, I thought you wanted me as a pitcher. And she was like, I mean, I want you as both. And I was like, okay, yeah.
Well, she does. I
So
do. Yeah, I remember because she told me you reminded her of Allison Kime, who did both.
yeah,
Now she didn't play outfield like you did, but she would be the DP hitter because Renee
right,
likes those two-way players still to this day. Now she's at Iowa, she still recruits two-way athletes, and you
right,
were a big part of that.
right. So it's just funny to look back because, like, if I were to tell somebody today that I played outfield and I hit when I wasn't pitching, they look at me like I'm crazy. Like some of my pitchers are like, no, and I'm like, yes. I did a little bit of everything. And so it's just funny because I think back to like some of the games that I started in like left field or right field when I was
Yeah,
a freshman, and like, we didn't have our roles set yet.
right.
There was some times where I would DP. And I don't know, I thought that was a really cool opportunity that I was given. And I did that for like my freshman and sophomore year. And then by the time I was a junior, our roles were kind of like set in place. And, me and Mackenzie spent a lot of time in the bullpen together. And I was okay with that. I loved, um, being one of the main pitchers. And I think if maybe I wasn't doing that, I would have wanted to be playing, or at least try to play outfield and hit for myself a little bit more. But because I was pitching almost every other game, I was fine with it. So
Yeah, because they made the decision after a while. It's like, let's just have her focus on pitching only, which we just had this
yeah.
past year. Sarah Willis, the current UCF pitcher,
Mm-hmm.
she was doing both outfield and pitching. But Coach Ball Malone,
Yeah.
who's the UCF head coach now, she was a two-way player herself. She sat down with Sarah during the season. It's like, we need you to pitch, and you
Mm-hmm.
can win more games with your arm than your bat. And
Mm-hmm.
Sarah Willis took off and ended up
Yeah.
winning American Conference Pitcher of the Year, joining you now as the only UCF pitchers to ever win an American Conference Pitcher of the Year. Did that help you once they decided you're just going to be a pitcher?
I mean, yes, because I will say, like, I was participating in both pitch, like coming in early to pitch, but then also coming in on days and hitting extra and trying to get more reps in the outfield and like this and that. So it made for some very long days, and a lot of it was on my own, I was volunteering to do that, and that's fine. But it made for some definitely very long, exhausting, both physically and mentally. And I do think that once, we made the decision that, hey, you're just going to focus on pitching, and I need you to be in the bullpen, and I need you to be ready to come in to relieve Mac or to start a game or whatever the situation called for. I do feel like I was able to focus a lot more of my energy and efforts on pitching and how to become the best pitcher that I could be.
you obviously get to UCF on campus. Mackenzie Otis has just come off her freshman year. She was a freshman of the year. She was the CUSA Pitcher of the Year. Had the greatest freshman year ever. And I remember it was a lot of chatter about, ooh, are those two going to get along? Because you were the highly touted pitcher. She was the reigning pitcher. Are they going to clash? They're two different personalities. Obviously, as it turns out, you two hit it off personality wise. We've talked
Yeah.
about that in nauseum over past interviews about how you two have connected. But what I'm really, and I've said, I think I've told you both, I'm very proud of is you both helped each other and you helped the other pitchers. And here we are, both of you are going to be in the same Hall of Fame class. Is that a message that you tell your students now in lessons about, hey, just because you're on the same pitching staff, you can be competitive, you have to be, but you still can help your teammate out, and it doesn't have to turn negative, like, as you know, a lot of times it can in softball.
Yeah. To be honest, I was my best self when Mackenzie was next to me, competing with me. You know what I mean? Um, my freshman year, I was just getting my toes wet. I had no idea what I was doing. I was a thrower. I wholeheartedly know for a fact that like I was not pitching my freshman year. I was just throwing, and I had no idea what pitching was about. And a lot of that was watching Mackenzie and watching how she actually spun the ball, and how, it wasn't just all about speed, and how she had this killer change up, and like just kind of watching her and being like, I really do want to be more like that. And so then, come into my sophomore year, I put a lot of work in over the summer of my freshman to sophomore year. I actually went back and played with my travel team. Um, and so I was even better prepared coming into my sophomore year. And me and Mackenzie, we just fed off of each other really, really well. And I never once wanted to be like the only ace on staff. Yes, I wanted to be the best, but I wanted to have somebody who, like, I thrived with having another person there who was sharing that burden with me. And so like that's kind of the message that I give to the kids that I give lessons to, is like, you don't want to be the only one. Like it's not fun when everything is on your shoulders. It's not a good time. It's not fun when the weight of every single game is falling on you. Not only mentally but like physically. And so I was able to be my best self because she was there, taking on that burden. And I we talk about me and Mackenzie a lot, but there were so many other pitchers that were there also sharing that burden, also, playing a major role in, our development and the camaraderie in the bullpen and things like that. So I don't want to take away from, any of the other pitchers on staff. But it was awesome to have somebody who, again, was, almost, my equal in, talent, yet we were so different with, personality and the pitches that we threw, and, things like that, that we fed off of each other well. But I can't remember a single time I where we clashed. You know what I mean? Like I can't remember
Right.
a
No, I agree.
time where we wanted the other to do bad or something like that so that we could get more playing time. It was always like, I do better when she does better. So I want her to do the best because that helps me out. I help her out. I would come in and close her games. She would come in and close my games. And so as long as it ended in wins for us, I really didn't care like the amount of innings that I was pitching.
Well, yeah, like you two even wanted to do interviews together in post games. Like you would request that, and then when they turned it down, they were like, "Oh, come on!" Like I would actually interview both of you because you two generally like being around each other, even to this day.
Yeah.
Like you two were together at the regionals when UCF won the regional,
Yeah.
and I remember her dad hit me up because you two were shown on TV going crazy, and that was the thing is like I think you helped her kind of loosen up, right? And she would go wild and crazy, and I think she kind of helped you calm down. That's part of that personality that you
Yeah,
two
for
really
sure.
What is that the biggest thing you took from her that helped you? Is kind of is what kind of things you took from her from that standpoint?
I mean, I think, and many will agree with this, I wore my heart on my sleeve as a
Yeah,
pitcher.
yeah.
I was a bulldog on the mound, and you knew that I was coming after you, whether you were a player, an umpire, like whoever. And I think one of the amazing things about Mackenzie is that she was just
Yeah.
stone faced. I mean, you didn't know if she was happy, sad, mad. You had no idea what was going on in her head. We joke that we both have RBF, um, but mine was still a little bit more outwardly than hers was. But again, I love that we were able to kind of complement each other in those ways. I love that my coaches let me be who I was. They let Mackenzie be who she was. They never tried to get her to show more emotion or for me to show less, as long as I was being respectful, which it was borderline at times. But they never like tried to take away that kind of thing from us. And I don't know, it just really worked out that we were both there at the same time.
When did it click for you that you're like, I belong here. I can succeed here in Division One level? Because you mentioned your first year, you were basically a thrower. Was there a
Yeah.
moment, a game, any that stood out where you're like, ooh, I feel really comfortable here. I'm confident. I can succeed here. Because, you know, I would say around halfway your sophomore year, you kind of started taking off, which would set you up for that junior year, which is obviously the greatest season any softball player at UCF has ever had, where you're an All-American, you led the NCAA and ERA, you were first team All-American, American Conference Pitcher of the Year, set numerous records at that time. But when was that
Yeah.
moment where you felt confident?
I feel like I think you're right. I mean, it definitely was somewhere in my sophomore year. There was not an aha moment in my freshman year. It was definitely sometime during my sophomore year. Um, I can't remember. Was the Bowling Green game in my sophomore year?
Yeah, 60 out where you set the 7 inning strikeout record,
Yeah,
16 strikeouts. Yeah.
that might have been one of those moments where I was like, wow, like I could really like run with this type of thing. I know in my sophomore year too, we had some fall ball games. Um, and I remember it was kind of like me versus Mackenzie. And I think my team ended up taking the win. I think it was like a series of 2 out of 3 games,
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that. Um, and I feel like that was where I really started to become a little bit more of like a vocal leader. My freshman year, I came in and I didn't want to step on anybody's toes. I wanted to just blend into the fold. And, you know, I wanted to be led because I didn't know what I was doing. And so then my sophomore year, it was kind of like I was saying, it was kind of like a me versus Mackenzie on both sides of, you know, the black and gold games and stuff like that. And I feel like that was where I kind of started to become a little bit more of like a leader and like maybe somebody that people were like looking to like, you know, come in and close a game or to pitch us to a victory and like things like that. And yeah, I think that was kind of where that like started. And then I'm sure at some point during the season, like you were saying, I think is
Yeah.
where like, I started to
Well,
kind of like take
I remember
off.
you beat Notre Dame, who I thought was a big win at the time.
Yeah, I
That was a
remember
good
that
Notre
too.
Dame team. Bowling Green, you mentioned. I think you may have had a walk-off hit also that year against either FAMU or Bowling Green. You had a walk-off hit to prove that you did hit. And 14 was significant because you obviously UCF would win the American Conference regular season or championship the first year of the American. Got to
Mm-hmm.
the regional final in 14. That nucleus returns in 15. When you have that magical year where you go 50-9 as a team, get ranked for the first time in program history. I mentioned your first team All American, top 10 finalist for National Player of the Year, first of everything at UCF softball. Do you have a favorite game or moment from that your career in general?
Yeah, definitely. In 2015, the walk-off win against Tulsa, hands down, in the conference championship.
McCloskey's walk off, the
Yeah.
walk off. You had a one hitter, a one hit shutout to beat
Yeah.
Tulsa 1-0.
Yeah, that was like the first time that I like cried during a game of joy. Like when she hit the walk off, I just remember I had like tears coming down my face. We were all, dressed up in weird costumes and we had all these props and we were just like we were absolute animals. And and we were hosting it at UCF, and
Yep.
so it was just like it was just so incredible. And yeah, I definitely think that was probably one of my favorite memories. I also think the 16 inning game against Tulsa was probably another one of my favorite memories. That was also one where I was in tears at the end of joy that the game was over. We
Yes.
won. But I feel like that was just, I don't know, a time, the one against Tulsa that was 16 innings, that was just a time where I feel like I like really pushed myself past my limits mentally and physically. Um, and it was really cool to do that, to like show myself, yes, we play 7 inning games, but you're capable of so much more.
Yeah, I which by the way, that 15 conference chat might be the last time UCF softball ever host a conference tournament. The Big 12 tournament is in Oklahoma City. So as of now, that is the last time UCF has hosted a softball championship. So yeah, that's historic for many, many reasons.
Yeah.
I remember after your last game in your senior year against Florida in the regionals, you got taken out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I will never forget the social media Knight fans and everything were tweeting at the UCF softball and saying thank you to you because you became super popular. You transcended the program. You're one of the handful of players that people recognize that didn't maybe follow softball. You helped bring eyeballs to softball. And I remember because the SID, Megan at the time, had you do a thank you video. That's how overwhelming it was. And you were emotional about that.
Yeah.
Did you feel that from the fans and how much they really enjoyed watching you play and really were big fans? Did you sense that at the time?
I don't think necessarily at the time in that moment. Again, just because at the end of that game, I was super emotional. I, had so many things going through my head. My career was over. A week later, I was supposed to be moving up to Chicago. Like there was just so much going on. Again, I'm terrible with social media, so I probably didn't even look to
That's
see what
probably a good
people.
thing, actually. That's probably a
Yeah.
good thing you did. But
But I definitely felt the like encouragement from the fan base that entire year. I mean, we had, people that were there at every game, old and young. And, we did a lot of autographs that year, things like that. And that was really cool. I definitely felt like the fan base was behind us that entire season.
yeah, it was pretty good. You mentioned your emotions. You're the only pitcher that I've seen. I've done UCF softball 18 years. You're the only pitcher that I've seen that leads the chants right before the game, where you're all in there by the dugout. You're like, leading the cheer before you
Yeah.
go out onto the field. Where did that come from you, from that standpoint? Where did that person side of you come from?
Yeah. I mean, again, like I was saying, I'm like a bulldog when I'm playing. It's like it's 150%, 150% of the time. Um, and it's not just a game to me. You know what I mean? It's so much more. And I would take it personal. Um, Somebody else being in the box hitting against me, I'm like, oh heck no, you're not going to be in that box. Like this is mine. And so I feel like just that, I don't know. And I wish I could tell you where that comes from, because there's times when I wish that some of my pitchers were a little bit more like that. I wish that I could tell you where that comes from. And I don't know where it comes from, but that's just who I am. Um, Especially when I'm playing something that I love so much in a game that I'm just extremely competitive about. And so that literally transcended to chants and cheering. And I would lead a lot of the cheers in the dugout. And I was very passionate about, constantly talking and keeping my teammates engaged and, this and that. I had little handshakes with everybody out there, all the defenders after we would get a strikeout, or an out in general. So I also have probably one of the loudest voices when I'm cheering. So that probably led to me being in the middle, leading that chant or whatever it was. But I I loved being a part of that program. I loved being the bulldog. I loved, leading the cheers and being a leader, both vocal and, just through my play and things like that. So I don't know. I think I just really took on that role in every aspect that I could, and cheering was just one of them.
And you're still, like you say, you still have a passion for the program because you still follow it very closely to the point where in 2022, I'll never forget, you text me while UCF is run ruling South Florida in the American Conference Championship game that Saturday morning. And you're like, can we host? And I'm like, yeah, pretty good chance unless we get screwed. Because you literally booked a flight to go to the
Yeah.
regional if they hosted. Because obviously it's well documented. We talked about 2015, how we got hosed out of hosting, and it's just, it is what it is. And here we are 7 years later, and they do get to host. Take me through that time period, because you made a decision quick there to go in there. You were there for the whole weekend, and you were emotional. You were part of the alumni that went onto the field when they won that regional. And those players said they won that in part because of the 15 team. They were aware of it, and you
Yeah.
felt like in a way that was closure, that the 15 team paved the way for 22. So just take me through that whole week there, because that was a unique, special week that I remember meant a lot to you.
Yeah. So before they were announced that they were going to be hosting, I, said to my wife, Sammy, I said, I really want to go down there and watch this and be a part of this, because this is going to be historic. This is something that I didn't get to do as a player, but I want to be part of it as a fan. And she was like, okay. And I was like, let's just wait until we find out, if they're hosting. I don't want to go buy any tickets until we know that, blah, blah, blah. So what does she do? She goes and buys the tickets anyways. Um, and we are loyal Southwest, flyers. So I will say that their tickets can be like converted into points and things like that. So long story short, she was like, we're going to use it no matter what. So I'm buying these tickets. So she didn't tell me though. I had no idea. So during the selection show, we're sitting there, we're watching intently. They get announced. I start crying. I'm like, oh my gosh, now we have to go buy these tickets. She's like, it's a done deal. We're already going. And I was like, what? And she was like, oh yeah, like the hotel, the plane, the rent, like all of it is booked. We're good to go. I was like, oh my gosh, like we're going, we're doing this. This is insane. So I canceled lessons, which I rarely do. I I don't cancel lessons ever.
This is a very understandable reason, though.
Yes, so I cancel lessons. I'm like, sorry guys, I gotta go be a part of this. Hope you can understand. See you when I get back. And so yeah, so we flew down there. My dad was living in South Florida at the time. He drives up, picks us up from the airport. We have a great weekend. I got to see so many people that I haven't seen in such a long time. So many of my former teammates, things like that. I also got to see some people that I played with in Pro League, like Jessica Burrows and Alicia Ocasio,
Right?
and people like that. And so yeah, it was such an incredible time. And I just I think in pro softball, it really opened my eyes to the fact that like everybody has a role to play. And so, we had 20 something people on roster. And there were a lot of times where I went days without playing a game, without seeing the field, without getting a single inning, because we had 7 pitchers. And so I kind of really bought into the role of like winning the game from the bench. And I really feel like that was a huge reason of why we won in 2016, the pro national championship. Um, And so I kind of like took on that role as a fan in the stands. And I just remember us, chanting and getting super into the game and going ballistic when, we scored a run. And just the entire atmosphere, I think, plays a huge role in how this game, the ebbs and flows of softball and stuff like that. It's such a momentum sport. And so, when we took a lead and things like that, I was like, we're going to keep this lead. And I'm going to be a part of the reason why we keep this lead. And so I think a lot of us kind of took on that, persona and idea that we were going to play a part in this and help them win this and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it definitely felt like the closure that we needed. Given that we felt gypped of that opportunity, and to see them win, not only to host but then to make it out of the regional, was just incredible.
You're on the field for the celebration.
Yeah, that
Oh,
was
that
really, really cool. Yeah, I think I can't remember who exactly it was, but after they, shook hands with the other team, whatever it was, I remember, I think I don't know if it was the girls or Coach Bear, somebody was like, "Come down on the field," and so we were all like, and so we run down there, we get on the field. There's a big, like, pile of us just jumping up and down, screaming, crying, sweating. It was so dang hot. Um, and yeah, it was so awesome.
it's pretty good. Couple quick things before we let you go. You mentioned Coach Bear. Your thoughts on the program now with Coach Bear? You've gotten to know, and the program where it's at is it's going to its first year now in the Big 12.
Yeah, yeah. I'm, so proud of what UCF has been able to do, even since, we, left there. And I'm glad that they, found Coach Bear after, Coach G went to Iowa, which I totally understand. And I'm so happy for her as well. But yeah, I think Coach Bear is doing some great things with the program. And I'm hoping that we, continue competing, hopefully for a national championship. And I would love to continue to be part of that.
She's told you that she wants you there at OKC when they get there. That's the goal.
Yes.
That they're going to get there on that. Obviously, your career speaks for itself. I mean, you didn't even mention you were a first team All NPF performer, the first only UCF player to ever do that. So you've done a million things. My last question is, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want people when people bring you up on campus? What do you want people to say about you?
Oh gosh. Oh, that's a hard one. I just hope they remember my heart and my passion for not only the game, but pitching and for UCF softball. So yeah, I hope they remember my passion and my heart. And yeah.
I think you're good. I think that'll be very much covered. And like I said, I'm super excited for you. The well-deserved honor to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. I'll start now. You realize after November 10th, your title changes. You'll be now Hall of Famer. You're no longer just Shelby now. You realize?
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure that everybody in my family is now referring to me as Hall of Famer instead of just Shelby.
That's what I'm doing now. So you're get used to it. Hey, congrats! Like I said, look forward to seeing you in person for the ceremony. But well-deserved honors, and honor to always watch you play, and even to now get to see you get inducted rightfully so. Thank you for doing this, and I'll look forward to seeing you in person.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Elo.